Okay, so for all you folks out there who just can't get enough of a good ghost story, you're in the right place. Welcome to the deep dive. This time, we're going all in on a seriously spooky account. The experiences of Sarah and Mark Bennett and their charming, using that term lightly, old Victorian on Ashwood Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, buckle up for this one. It's going to get creepy.
You got that right. We're talking a full-on deep dive here, folks. A story so packed with chills and classic haunted house vibes that it'll have any paranormal enthusiast on the edge of their seat.
Oh yeah, imagine late autumn 2015. Sarah and Mark, they're these totally stoked first-time homeowners, absolutely head over heels for this three-story Victorian beauty. Original woodwork, the picture-perfect wraparound porch, the whole 9 yards. Now, it was listed a bit on the low side price-wise, and sure, there were a few whispers going around locally, but they were just so smitten with the place. Sarah even said, and I quote, "We moved in on a day when the trees were bare and the wind never seemed to stop, but it was perfect to us." I mean, talk about setting the stage for a haunting, right?
Ah.
I could practically feel that relentless wind, like it's right here.
Oh, absolutely. That initial excitement, that whole picture of happy domestic life they were building, it makes what happened next all the more, well, disturbing. They were doing all the typical new homeowner stuff, painting, unpacking, taking those cheesy "we bought a house" photos by the fireplace. I think setting that baseline, that sense of normalcy, is key when you're dealing with a story like this. It helps us really grasp just how far things spiraled.
So right, let's get into it. How did this perfect picture start to get all messed up? It wasn't like a jump scare in a movie. It was more like a slow burn, a gradual creep of unease. First, there were these little things that you could almost shrug off as nothing. Like the floorboards upstairs would creak, but they were both downstairs, maybe chilling on the couch. You know that feeling, right? Like, hold on, did someone just walk up there?
Yeah.
Or say the sound of keys jingling in the kitchen, but neither of them had even been near the kitchen. Just little things, but just enough to make you go.
Totally. These little occurrences, they're classic examples of what we often talk about, in the paranormal world. Residual energy, minor disturbances, the kind of stuff that our brains, wired as they are for logic, try to explain away. Oh, it's just the old house settling, right? Got to keep things feeling safe and orderly.
And then there's the guest room. Oh, that guest room. Man, they could have the heat blasting, but it just stayed freezing. Icy, even. Sarah even joked that it felt like, I don't know, someone had just left the room, leaving that door open and that chill behind, Except this chill just wouldn't go away. It's almost funny, in a dark kind of way. You buy this beautiful old home, excited to have people over, but the guest room feels like it's got this permanent, ghostly chill.
You hit the nail on the head there. That cold spot, it's a staple in paranormal lore, In folklore and all these stories, cold spots are often linked to a sudden drop in energy, the kind of energy a spirit supposedly needs to, manifest itself. Whether or not you buy into that, literally that feeling of unexplained cold can really mess with you on a gut level.
No doubt about it. And then the sounds got even weirder. The wind outside, it would moan through the walls, and Sarah described it as, well, she said it sounded like a voice in winter.
Okay.
Pretty creepy stuff, right? But here's where things really ramp up, especially for us ghost story geeks. They started hearing pacing outside their bedroom door every night, like clockwork, between 2 and 3 a.m., both of them. Mark, he's the brave one. He'd go check it out. Nothing there, night after night. Imagine that kind of relentless, unexplained sound. It would drive you absolutely batty.
That shared experience, hearing it together, that's huge. It moves it beyond, just one person's imagination. And Mark confirming the pacing, it gives Sarah's experience more weight, more credibility. Plus, the specific timing, 2 to 3 a.m., it lines up with what a lot of folks in the paranormal community believe is a time of, well, heightened activity, when that supposed veil between worlds is thinner.
Oh, and we haven't even gotten to the smell yet. Okay, brace yourselves, because this is just nasty. Imagine a thick, sour smell, like rotting wood mixed with old milk. And it would pop up out of nowhere in the stairwell, the guest room, no matter how much they cleaned and scrubbed. They said it was even worse when it was cold. Seriously, what do you even do with that? Was there a ghostly milkman who spilled his load 100 years ago, or what?
Our sense of smell, it's incredibly powerful when it comes to, well, stirring up emotions, that kind of constant bad smell. It would have created this feeling that something was just deeply wrong, like an unwelcome presence. And the fact that it got worse when it was cold, that's fascinating. Could it have been something environmental, something triggered by temperature changes, or was it something a little more out there?
And then things escalate. We get to the scratching. Now, this is the kind of stuff that just makes your skin crawl, right? It started behind the walls. Sometimes it was right behind their headboard, like as they were trying to fall asleep. Then inside the closet, even when the door was open, as if something was trapped in there. Mark, being the practical guy, he figures, mice, gotta be mice. Sets traps, nothing. Calls an exterminator, more traps, still nothing. You really gotta wonder what they were picturing was making that scratching.
The fact that the scratching kept happening, even after they tried everything to find the source, that's what makes it more than just, some pesky rodents. It becomes this unexplained thing, fueling all those ideas about unseen entities. And the fact that it happened in these, well, personal spaces, their bedroom, their closet, it really starts to chip away at that feeling of safety in their own home.
Okay, but get ready for this. Things take an even weirder turn. Picture this, Sarah's poking around, and she finds this old photo in a kitchen cabinet. It's yellowed, cracked, shows a family of 5 standing in front of their house. But get this, the father's face has been totally scratched out. I'm talking deep, angry gouges. And wait for it, she doesn't even tell Mark right away. Can you believe that? I'd be blabbing about it to anyone who'd listen.
That's a really telling detail, right? It shows just how uneasy she was getting, how much she felt like something was truly off. But maybe she was also afraid of how Mark would react, or maybe just not ready to fully face how strange things were getting. It's a very human reaction when you're dealing with the truly unsettling.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, Mark finds another photo, tucked under a loose floorboard in the attic. Another family, same deal, face scratched out. Okay, at this point, they've got to be thinking, this is way beyond creaky floorboards and old house stuff. 2 photos, 2 families linked to the house, and this super creepy act of, erasing their faces. If you've ever looked into the history of an old house, you know that kind of detail just sends shivers down your spine.
It definitely suggests there's a pattern here, right? A potential link to some negative energy, something lingering, or maybe even a symbolic message tied to the house and the people who lived there before. The fact that the photos were hidden in different spots, it suggests that whatever this presence is, it's pretty pervasive. Like it wanted to keep these things hidden.
And then the whispers started. At first they were low, quiet, and you couldn't make out what they were saying. They tried to find logical explanations, the wind making weird sounds, maybe the neighbor's radio or something. But then the whispers started to respond to them. Sarah, who's way braver than I am, she actually asked out loud, "What do you want?" And she swears she heard a faint but clear reply, "To stay."
Chills, right. I mean, that's the moment you realize, okay, this is not just a drafty window or some distant conversation. This is something else entirely.
That's when things take a serious turn. Going from random weird noises to actual communication, it suggests something with awareness, something that knows they're there and is responding to them. And the answer, "to stay," just so simple and direct, it really adds to the creepiness. But wait, there's more. One night, Mark wakes up suddenly because he hears a woman sobbing in the hallway. He nudges Sarah, thinking it's her, but she's sound asleep beside him. So he cautiously opens the bedroom door, and the sobbing just stops. Dead silence. And then, right in his ear, a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here." From that point on, they slept with the lights on. And I don't blame them. That's some straight-up horror movie material.
Being told directly that you're not welcome, that you don't belong, that's a common theme in haunting stories. It's no longer just random events. It's a direct, unsettling message. It suggests that whatever's in the house, it doesn't want them there.
Okay, so now let's talk about some possible physical evidence. Mark finds these deep gouges under the guest room bed, claw marks dug right into the wood floor, like something was desperately trying to dig its way out or maybe hold on to something. And their first thought, naturally, was their dog, Sebastian. That little rascal.
Right. At first, they thought it was a dog. But then comes this key piece of information. Sebastian, their dog, absolutely refused to go upstairs. And Sarah had also noticed scratches on the bedposts, as if something had tried to hide under the bed. And, well, hold on. Imagine that something clinging to the bedpost for dear life, trying not to be seen. And honestly, how often do you see a dog scratching bedposts like that? It just doesn't add up.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting, because now we're entering the realm of dreams. Sarah starts having this recurring nightmare. She's trapped in a house that's upside down, and their wedding photo, the faces are missing. That's already super unsettling, right? It taps into those deep fears of instability, of loss. And then she hears Mark screaming from the basement of the dream. And when she goes to find him, she runs into this figure on the stairs with her own face. I mean, talk about the kind of dream that just sticks with you.
Dreams, they can be like a window into our subconscious, reflecting our anxieties and the emotional undercurrents of our lives. When you have nightmares that are so vivid, so specific, and they keep coming back, especially in a situation like this, it definitely suggests a deep sense of unease, like something's fundamentally wrong and that image of the missing faces in the wedding photo, that's particularly powerful. Maybe it symbolizes a threat to their relationship, to their future together.
And it gets even creepier because now Mark starts sleepwalking. And guess where he keeps ending up? The basement. Remember, the basement was a key location in Sarah's nightmares, too. Talk about a blurry line between dreams and reality. And then he starts experiencing these episodes of lost time. Like, he'll find himself in a different room with absolutely no recollection of how he got there, holding some random object. One time, he was in the attic, holding the unplugged landline phone, whispering, "They're in the walls. They never left."
It's just bone-chilling, right? It's like whatever's happening is starting to mess with his mind. Those episodes of sleepwalking, the lost time, it could be, a response to the incredible stress they were under, but given everything else that was happening, it does add to this overall sense of a presence, something influencing their lives, maybe even their minds.
Finally, they do what any sane person would do in this situation. They reach out to a local historian, hoping to find some explanation in the history of the house. And what they discover, well, let's just say it's not exactly a feel-good story. Turns out the house belonged to a man named Joseph Langley, who was tragically institutionalized after his wife and children died in a house fire back in 1890. And guess where the fire started? The basement. Langley survived, but his whole family, gone.
That's a lot of tragic history tied to that house, a major trauma associated with that very spot. The historian also mentioned that there were local stories about Langley wandering the halls at night, checking to see if they'd come back. Now, whether that's true history or just a local legend, it definitely makes you think. Could it be that Langley's presence, his grief and longing, was somehow connected to the things Sarah and Mark were experiencing?
It definitely makes you wonder. And of course, they tried all the classic paranormal remedies, right? They burned sage, which anyone who's into ghost hunting knows usually doesn't really solve anything. They even tried to get a priest to come bless the house, but no one would come. That's a pretty bad sign, right? Like, even the spiritual authorities were steering clear of Ashwood Lane.
It does seem like there was already a sense of unease about the house, maybe because of similar stories over the years. And not being able to get a blessing, it adds to this feeling that whatever was happening in the house, it wasn't easily dealt with.
And then things hit a breaking point. It was like the final straw. There's this massive bang in the kitchen, sounded like an explosion. Every single cabinet door bursts open, drawers are pulled out, everything's scattered everywhere. It's like some poltergeist had a really bad temper tantrum. And then the laughing starts. Mark describes it as completely inhuman, high-pitched, distorted, almost like a broken record of a child's giggle, but with this static over it. And get this, it seemed to be coming from the heating vents. I mean, come on, how freaky is that?
That combination of, actual physical stuff happening and then that creepy sound, it was like the final push for them to get out. The fact that the laughter sounded so inhuman and that it seemed to be coming from inside the house itself, it makes the whole thing so much more sinister.
But the absolute final straw, the thing that really tipped the scales, was Sarah waking up in the middle of the night and finding Mark standing over her, whispering gibberish. And when she reached out to him, he just collapsed.
Yeah.
That's just pure terror. They didn't wait around to see what happened next. They packed up what they could and left the next morning. Didn't even bother putting the house up for sale. Just left.
That kind of immediate flight response, it really shows how terrified they must have been. It was like their safety, their mental and physical well-being just overrode everything else.
And then there are the lingering mysteries. The neighbors told stories about seeing the porch light flicker on sometimes and hearing footsteps inside, even though the house was empty. Now, you always have to take those kinds of stories with a grain of salt, Local legends and ghost stories, they tend to get exaggerated over time. But still, it adds to the whole creepy vibe.
It definitely leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Did things quiet down after Sarah and Mark left, or is there still something going on in that house, regardless of who lives there? The porch light, maybe it was just faulty wiring, but in this context, it definitely takes on a more spectral significance, especially if you're prone to believing in that kind of thing.
The good news in all this is that Sarah hasn't reported any weird happenings in their new home, and their dog, Sebastian, he's totally fine there, even in the basement. Sarah truly believes that whatever they went through was connected to that specific house on Ashwood Lane, not to them personally, and I really hope she's right.
That feeling of finally being safe, of escaping something tied to a particular place, it's a common thread in a lot of these haunting stories. And Sebastian being comfortable in their new home, especially the basement, it's a good sign. Like maybe whatever negative energy or whatever it was isn't following them around.
So that's the story of Sarah and Mark Bennett's time in that shall we say, spirited Victorian on Ashwood Lane. I'm curious, what do you all make of it? Was it a real haunting, a case of shared anxieties amped up by an old creepy house, or something else entirely?
It's the big question, isn't it? We've got all these escalating experiences, this tragic history associated with the house, and a clear progression from unease to outright fear. The fact that both Sarah and Mark experienced a lot of these things together, that makes it less likely to be just individual psychological stuff. But on the other hand, you can't completely rule out the power of suggestion, the influence of a spooky environment, and our human tendency to find patterns even where there might not be any.
It's a real head-scratcher, for sure. What were some of the details from Sarah and Mark's story that stood out to you? For all you ghost story fans out there, what theories do you find most compelling? Those defaced photos, maybe hinting at some past tragedy? The disembodied voices and their cryptic messages? Or that totally creepy, inhuman laughter coming from inside the house itself? Let us know. We love hearing your thoughts.
I have to say, those photos, they're really unsettling. It's like there was some anger directed at the people in those pictures, maybe some lingering resentment from the past. And the way things escalated, going from subtle noises to actual communication to things physically moving, it does point to something more than just, an old house creaking.
And speaking of sharing, we want to hear from you. If you've had any spooky encounters of your own, or you've got a haunted house tale to tell, please send them our way. You know our email address. We are always eager to hear your stories and dive deeper into the world of the unexplained.
Your thoughts and experiences, they really add to these conversations. We encourage you to keep exploring these stories and to consider all the different ways we can interpret these encounters with the unknown.
And on that note, until we meet again in the shadows, stay spooky, friends.
Yeah.